Candace, how's it going today?
So good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It has been an interesting year, and I guess we have to start there. You know, pandemic life, the chaos of the last year. Yeah. You've been pretty busy. We'll talk about all that, but how was like quarantine life for you?
Quarantine life at home has actually been really great. I mean, I've made the best of it and lots of good things have come from it with my family. Quarantine life, when I'm actually filming a movie and have to quarantine while I'm in Canada, is like a whole other story. That I do not like quarantine life.
Well, I was talking to a friend. I was talking to a friend the other day who films, and he was telling me what he has to go through. So is it basically, like, take us through this. Is it basically like you show up and it's a waiting period where you're like isolated kind of?
Yes. So you have to take like COVID test after COVID test after COVID test to just be able to travel. And then once you get to the border, you have to take another test. And now they've implemented 3 days of a quarantine in a specific government hotel until you receive another result of your COVID test. Yes.
A government hotel's a thing. Okay. Anyway, continue.
Yes. And then you go to wherever you're going to quarantine, whether that's a home or a hotel or apartment or whatever, for the other 11 days, because it's a total of 14 days in quarantine. So I've quarantined mostly with Mary Lou Henner because we've been filming these movies together. And that part has been wonderful to actually have a buddy. And we're able to do that because we literally travel together and go through the process together. And then we're just in the house together. But I counted and within the last 9 months, I have spent 8 or 9 weeks in quarantine.
That's crazy.
So that's like over like 2 months in quarantine, isolated without my family. I'm just like, I'm so sick of it.
Well, because they can't come with you, right? Like that's a whole other thing.
Exactly.
So you have to be isolated.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Because every time I see your Instagram and I've commented, I laugh. You've had some funny videos while you've been in quarantine, but it seems like you've been really busy filming, but that requires this whole crazy process. So wow. So working has been different then during quarantine for you. And you've had a bunch of other stuff going on. You launched a QVC, a line with QVC of clothing, which is pretty cool. Talk about that a little bit.
Thank you. Yes, I'm wearing one of the tops from my line and the jeans. You just can't see them. But yeah, this has been a couple years in the making, and we launched last month. It's a clothing line exclusive to QVC, and it's basically what I want to wear and what my style represents, which is very West Coast, casual, comfortable, but always has a fashionable and stylish element to it. So that's really how I live. And over the years, I think just starting as DJ Tanner, I've always had people ask me about style, and it's been very consistent through the years. So I was so happy that I was able to partner with QVC for the clothing line, and chose them to do it because I've had great success with QVC and my other partnerships with Dr. Lancer and my Dayspring faith-based products. So that felt very natural to do this with QVC. And it's also size inclusive, meaning we have everything from petites and double extra small through 5X. And that was just so important to me, that everyone feel beautiful and comfortable, because God made us in all shapes and sizes.
Yeah. Well, and I know nothing about fashion, but the clothes look very nice and it's very exciting. And a lot of people I've seen very excited about this. And I have to ask you this, and I feel like every time we talk, I ask you this because I can't figure out when you sleep or if you have clones of yourself or like what is going on, because you are busy and like, and I know you've written a book on this, actually, balancing it all, but how do you balance it all?
Well, at this point in my career and all of my companies and businesses, I mean, I have a team behind me. This is not a one-man show. I could never do it that way. It was that way maybe 15 years ago, but now I have a great team that we collaborate and work together, and I could not do it by myself. And I also couldn't do it without a supportive husband and family. But, these are like all of the businesses that I have are things that I have prayed about, that I dreamed up of first, and then started praying about for 10, 15, 20 years. And I am relentless in the sense that I just keep pushing and working to see them come to fruition. But I love it. Like, it's my passion. So it never feels like work in that way. But I have to tell you, like, sleep is very, very important, because if I don't get my full 8 hours of sleep, I actually like 9 hours of sleep, it messes up my day. Like, I cannot handle 5 or 6 hours and push through it. I just can't. So I prioritize sleep very heavily. It's at the top of the list, as I do with exercise, which helps me to keep going.
Yeah. Well, and that's incredibly important. Like, you've got to sleep. I'm a 5 or 6 hour person. And after like 5 days, though, you need to crash. Like, you need to sleep a little longer. Like, on the weekend, you have to. And it's so important what you said, too, because you were talking about how, like, you dream things up and then you pray them through. And then you were saying that it could be like some of this is 10, 15 years in the making. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of us, we want things to kind of happen, and we want them to happen right away. And when you look at your story, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of the details, but from what I remember in our conversations in the past and what I know, obviously full house, huge career. You then had kids and you took a break to a degree from Hollywood. You sort of walked away. You lived in Florida for a long time.
Yeah.
Then you make this comeback into Hollywood, right? And you come right back, and your career is bigger than ever, and you're doing so much more. I would imagine a lot happened in that mix. And I was asking people for questions, if people had questions for you, what they would ask. And somebody said, what was that like for you to step away, be with your family, and then come back in the way you have? What was that process like?
Yeah, it wasn't an easy process to step away, because that's all I had ever known. Had been working my whole life, but I knew that I wanted to stay home and raise my kids. It was really important, but it was a huge adjustment. And it took a few years to surrender to motherhood and feel like that was enough, and I was enough, and that God loves me no more, no less, no matter what I do or don't do. So it's like that took a long time to really understand that. But I've always had a desire to work, and I love it. So I always knew I wanted to come back, but I really dug into my life with my family, but along the way, just praying through what my dreams and goals were, even knowing that was not going to be the season of my life at that time. But if God had ever opened the door again, here are the things that I would really love to do and am passionate about. So the 10 years where I really stepped away, I don't know that I would be where I am today if I hadn't, because it put me in a place and gave me the bigger picture and perspective of God first, and God in my life and my family. And it grounded me and prepared me for where I am today, and being able to make the decisions that I do make with confidence when it comes to running businesses.
Yeah. Well, and also, you've always been a person who authentically talks about your faith, because it's who you are. It's not, it's not like you're putting that on and going out, and it's just who you are. It's with you all the time. It's the person you are. And I would imagine that time, and I can't speak for you, but I think you just sort of said this, that time helped you kind of root that in, because Hollywood's a tough place. And luckily, I feel like I always have the joke, like, people who were stars as kids, they obviously, it's not really a joke. A lot of people struggle. They go through a lot of things, but you and your brother did not have that. Like, you guys were you could tell you came from a good family. You were very structured. You were very solidified in your faith and what you believed. But having that time, I would imagine, to really root it before, as an adult, you came back into it, was probably pretty formative for you, I would imagine. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, everything. I can keep talking about it, but I would just be reiterating exactly what you said. It really gave me the foundation for who I am and what I'm able to do today, because I was very reliant upon God. And that's when you realize, even if things are going well, you still need to be reliant on God. So that gave me that perspective and understanding.
Yeah. So circling back to quarantine a little bit and COVID, like what would you say has been, and you talked about some of the nice parts of it, but what would you say has been let's start with the positive, the most positive thing that you weren't expecting, maybe the most interesting thing to sort of come out of it on a personal family level for you?
Well, I like that's all of it. It's family. One, I was an empty nester at the start of COVID, and then two of my kids came back, and one's away at high school in another state, but still got a good amount of time with him. And then it was marriage, which I've talked a little bit about on some other shows, but I knew the quarantine or the COVID or the pandemic was going to make us or break us, because it became the most amount of time my husband and I had spent together in a very long time, because we both travel for work. And so we were put face to face with a lot of the issues we often just brush aside or sweep under the rug. And now we're like, oh, can't do that because I'm living with you every single day.
There's no escape.
There's
nowhere to go.
Yeah. So I tell you, it was a tough at the start. It was like this whole re-entry, relearning what we're doing and how we cohabitate. And then, it got a little hairy, but then to the point where we were like, okay, here are the issues. How are we going to work through them? How are we going to process it? Or are we? And of course we were like, yes, we're going to, but it was tough. And especially when you're living with someone, I know people listening can relate. You're like, I don't even want to talk to this person, let alone look at them. And yet I can't leave the freaking house.
Exactly. And see, in our house, we were basically like, oh, we're going to do a kitchen renovation, and we gutted the kitchen like the end of February, and it was like March 7th. And we're like, let's put our new kitchen in. And they're like, we can't. And so we didn't have a kitchen during the first 2 months of the pandemic. And so there's no kitchen, no sink. I'm talking like nothing. It was an empty room. And then the kids are learning at home. And so to your point, what you're saying, the kitchen was an extra level, right? But we're sitting there thinking, this is crazy. And I was the busiest I've ever been, but I was home, which is weird. And so we're teaching the kids, and it was just crazy. Yeah. And you get a chance to really dig in on the things you need to, but then you also have this family time that we had never had before. And I doubt we'll ever get again, where we were just together and able to do things in a positive way that I hadn't experienced. So that was kind of cool in a different way for us. But it's been so crazy. It's been so crazy. And but you've been filming, so you've been working in between the mix of all of that as well. And so that balance to me is so interesting that you strike between the businesses and the working. When it comes to what you do, because you spoke about this again, you pray through it. What is the ultimate determinant for you of knowing once you've gone through and prayed? I know a lot of people have this question as they're trying to understand prayer and how God works, for knowing that a project is something you should dive into or not dive into. What's kind of that make or break for you?
If I'm passionate about it and I feel like it's something God put on my heart or I want to be doing, I'm excited about it. If I'm praying through it and there are no red flags, then I'm like, then I proceed. And I don't feel like I'm going ahead of God in any way. But I feel like if I don't visibly see or hear or feel a red flag saying stop, abort, then you have to follow with action. But of course, I'm listening that if something does come up that feels like, oh, I need to maybe reconsider this, maybe this is God's way of letting me know, then I absolutely have to consider that, even if I've pursued it. But I know a lot of, and this happens to me, but a lot of times we're like, I don't know if God wants me to, I don't know if I should, and I'm like, no, take the leap of faith, take the step, because I don't feel like, God's always going to hand it to you on a platter. Like, we have to do the work too. But if you're honestly praying through it and asking for his guidance and his direction, and you're just not hearing, I consider that, and you can tell me if you disagree or if I'm wrong. If I don't hear any objections, and I'm not talking about one day, like, oh, I'm going to pray one day and then, then I'm just going to go for it. I'm talking about, I really prayed through this, and it may be a few weeks, it may be a month. If I don't hear anything stopping me, then I take that as God saying, go ahead, go do it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. You get a piece too. You kind of know, like, this is something I should do. I will tell you the times when I don't want to do something and it gets kind of like dropped in my lap, and it's only happened a few times in my life that way. But it's shocking. And it's like, okay, God wants me to do this, and I really am trying not to do it. I don't know if you've ever had that in your career where you're like, I'm going to not do this because and it's like, you maybe haven't prayed through it enough to kind of get that piece. And it's always funny to me when that happens. But have you experienced that?
Oh, well, I mean, being a co-host on The View was one of those moments where I was like, I kept praying about it, and I'm like, but I don't want to do it.
But God, wait, why?
And God kept going, nope, here. And I was like, but I really don't want to do it. And then I was like, I think I have to do it.
Well, you did a great job. I got to come see you once while you were doing that in New York. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, something like that. And here's the thing, because you're such a joyful person, which, by the way, I saw the thing you were on. I think you were on Bob Saget's podcast where you were talking about, how people will question whether or not you're really truly this kind and joyful on social media. And you guys were kind of joking about that. Do you really get questions from people about that?
Yes, I genuinely do.
But like, are they thinking that you're making it up or pretending? Is that
Yeah, they do. I mean, they're saying it in a comment. So I've never had anyone ask me face to face.
Well, because nobody would, right? Nobody would. I mean, no normal person would.
But enough to the point where while we were talking, I brought it up because I do have a lot of people that think I can't possibly be this happy or such a positive person. So I was like, I think anyone who knows that I am.
Right. That's what faith does, though, to a person. And I mean, we've talked about a million different things in this conversation, but if people are listening or they're watching, it comes back to, you pray through it. You're connected to God, and nobody's perfect. You're not perfect, but that relationship gives us that peace and that ability. And listen, I'm not happy every day, right? But at moments when I'm recognizing that I need to be maybe a little more positive or whatever, I get that strength and that peace from God. And so I just thought it was funny though that you're like fielding these comments from people who are doubting that, when very clearly it comes from your faith, right?
It absolutely does. And, people could still argue and say, well, it's easy for you. You have a job and you make money, and look, you're sitting in this nice house. So it's easy to be happy because you have money. I hear that a lot too. And I'm like, no, because the thing is, I have so many friends, and even when you that are faithful people that love the Lord, that have much less than I have in a tangible, monetary sense, that have more joy than I do. When I had the ability to go on a few mission trips in Africa, I have never seen such joyful people who have so little. And it's because their joy is in the Lord. So it really doesn't matter the stuff that you have, that doesn't make you joyful. And again, we can talk about the difference between happiness and joy. I mean, joy comes from the Lord. It's a peace that is you have on the inside. It does not matter what your circumstances are. You have joy because of the love and peace and grace that God gives you. Happiness is like superficial. Happiness depends on your mood. It depends on what you're doing that day. It depends on your circumstances. So I'm a joyful person.
Well, yeah, no. And it's so, what you just said about money and things is so interesting, because it's such an American way to think. I don't want to get myself in trouble, but in our country, and that's not a bad thing. Work hard. We all love to work hard. I love to work hard. You love to work hard. But this idea that that's what's going to make you happy is not true necessarily at all, because we know that there are plenty of wealthy people in Hollywood and media and all over the place, business, who are not happy at all. They're not joyful at all. And so it's really about, having your priorities straight, and no matter where people are in life. So I think that's such a huge, important lesson. Now, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but I've been doing this thing where I ask people a legacy question. And whenever I use that word, it's like, I feel like it kind of weirds people out a little bit. Like, what do you want your legacy to be? But, for you, you're doing so much. You've built so many amazing businesses. You impact people positively through books. When all is said and done, like, what do you want that legacy to be for you?
You're actually going to make me cry. You're not going to like freak me out, but
I've never made you cry before, actually. So that's good. In an interview. This is good. Okay.
That's what I feel like, and it's like, what do I want my legacy to be? I hope that my legacy, when people think about me, they know how much I love the Lord and I shared the Lord with them. Like, that's genuinely, truly what I want my legacy to be. Even with my family, and that goes without saying, but for all the people that I don't know, that just see me as a person on television, I just want them to say, like, oh, she was a faithful woman of God. She loved the Lord. And hopefully I've, through that, have shared with them, and they've found the Lord as well. Yeah. I mean, that's why really all the things that I do, my goal is to bring people one step closer to Jesus. And so even though I make clothes, I make movies that aren't Christian movies, but I believe everything that I do honors the Lord. But I hope that in my speech, when I come on a podcast and I talk with you, or I'm on secular television and I'm on the Today Show or Good Morning America, I talk about the Lord.
Or The View, maybe.
Or The View. I talk about the Lord. And that's what I want people to remember me by.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing, right? Because it's so easy when we go back to the whole money and things conversation. And I'm guilty of this just because I get so wrapped up in the things that are happening around, or what I want to do, or what my goals are, that you forget that this is a temporary home, right? Like, this is temporary, and there's so many people who need to hear the truth, and, rethinking what we're talking about and what we're doing. And every single project you just mentioned gives you a chance, like you were saying, to speak into people's lives in some amazing way. And that is where you have the ability, through not only how you live, but the things you say, to really walk that out and help people connect with the most important thing, right? That they possibly could ever connect with. And so that to me is incredible. And as always, I love getting a chance to sit down and catch up with you and talk with you. Where can people go for the clothing line if they want to check it out?
So it's exclusively at QVC. So you can go to qvc.com. And really, it is important to know that on our launch day, that's the day you want to buy it, because the quantity, although we have a lot, our first launch, we sold out of almost everything. So the day you keep up on my Instagram, and you can follow me there at Candace C. Bure, and then I fill you in on the dates when a new collection is launching. And all the information's there, and my website too. My website's really the hub for all the different things and the places, which is CandaceCBure.com.
And the books, and I would recommend get the books. The books are great. You've got kids' books too, which my kids love. So just appreciate you and appreciate, these conversations. You're speaking into a lot of people who need to hear things, and they're hearing it from someone they admire and they get to watch on TV and movies and films, and you're making an impact. Listen, Candace, I so appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy.